Good morning, everyone. I want to thank Patrick for this class this morning because it goes along with what I'm talking about. And it's something to think about. The question is, will your anchor hold in the storms of life? You know, I've heard people often say, cheer up, things could be worse. So this guy decided he'd cheer up, and sure enough, they got worse. But a lot of problems as we go through life, things get us discouraged. And a lot of times there are not anybody there to encourage you, to help lift you up out of the mire that you're in. And that can be very difficult for a Christian, and especially even harder for a non-Christian, because who's there? But we need to try and never forget who we serve. Now, if you turn to the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 4, which Silas read for us this morning, and thank you for that. But I want you to notice something here in verses 14 through 18 of Ecclesiastes chapter 2, 14 through 18. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walketh in darkness. And I myself perceive also that one event happens to all. Then said, I in my heart, as it happeneth to the fool, so it happeneth even to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, this is also vanity. For there is no remembrance of the wise, there is none of the fool forever, seeing that which is now that in the days to come shall be forgotten. And how dieth the wise man as the fool? Therefore I hated life, because I hated that the work under the sun was grievous unto me, for all is vanity and vexation of the spirit. Yea, I hated all my labor which I had taketh under the sun, because I should leave it unto the man that shall be after me. Now, understand that Solomon married a lot of women that he was not supposed to marry. These were women who had gods made out of stone or wood or whatever. And when Solomon got older, they took his heart away from God. So what you're seeing here is Solomon in a state of despair. He's turned away from God, and now he sees himself as like, this is all vanity and vexation of the spirit. I'm going to die. No one's going to remember me. But we're talking about him, so he did remember him. But we can't feel that way. These things happen. People will often turn away from you when you have a problem. I don't want to hear it. I got better things to do. I got my own problems. Sometimes our health gets bad and we get discouraged. But you can't do that. You got to keep turning to God for that encouragement, and turn to your brethren for that encouragement. How many of you know who Fanny Crosby is? She wrote a lot of songs in our songbook. Did you know that she was not born blind? She was blind. The doctor that was in the town where she lived had to go away, and there was another fellow there who thought he was a doctor, and he made a salve for her eyes because they were infected, and it burnt her eyes. When that happened, he left town in a hurry. But it never stopped her. Here's a woman who cannot see, and she wrote all these songs. Now, she wrote a lot of other songs in here because she wrote on like 500 different pen names. But she did not let this stop her. She gave away a lot of her money to charities, to people with difficulties. In fact, when she died, she only had a few $1,000s in the bank because she gave it all away. But she didn't let it discourage her. She still wanted to know more about God, understand what he was talking about. So we can't let things like that discourage us. But we do often get discouraged, unfortunately. If you turn to the world for help, you're not going to get it. You may find a few good people out there who'd be willing to talk to you. But This is where you get your encouragement from, is here. Think about Job. This poor guy lost everything. His family, his cattle, money, everything. But if you turn to the book of Job in chapter 1, in verses 20 and 21 of chapter 1, notice what he says here. Then Job arose and rent his mantle, shaved his head, fell down upon the ground, and worshipped. He was naked, and he said, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord give, and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. I'm not saying do not get upset by things that happen. But what I am saying is don't let it discourage you to the point that you no longer can do anything. God took care of Job. When you read the book, he was better off than he was to begin with because of his belief and trust. Turn to Matthew chapter 10, if you will. That's right after 9 and right before 11. Matthew 10, verses 29 through 31. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing? And one of them shall not fall on the ground without your Father. But the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear ye not, therefore, ye are more valuable than many sparrows. If a sparrow cannot drop to the ground without God knowing it, that tells you he knows about you too. He knows everything. He even knows the number of hairs on your head. Well, for some of us, I realize that's not very many, but he knows. He knows these things. And if he knows these things, when you go to him in prayer and ask for help on these things, he's going to help you. But it requires sometimes being patient. Those that wait upon the Lord, their strength he'll renew. But if you're not willing to do that, then you're going to have a problem. Sometimes with all the trials and tribulations we go through, we give up. We think God doesn't care. He's not doing anything. But you must remember, it is not God that gives up on us. It is us who give up on God. Look back in the Old Testament. He never gave up on the children of Israel. Even though they'd go off astray, he never gave up. So what do you have to hold on to through this life? If you do not have God to hang on to, what do you have? You have family, you say, yeah, I got friends, got my teddy bear. But these things will all vanish away. Or maybe even turn their back on you. But if you're holding on to God, you have something that you can hold on always. Knowing he's always going to be there. Remember, prayer is a word of encouragement. In Matthew 11, verse 28. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I shall give you rest. Now this is an invitation for everybody to come unto him. But also think of it this way too. that if you think God isn't doing anything for you, and you're wondering, remember, why did you go unto him in the first place? Jesus said, come unto me. You did. But then all of a sudden things are going south. Things are terrible. And now you've forgotten why you went to him in the first place. We can't do that. That invitation is for everyone outside of Christ and inside to remember who you are and what he has done for you. Turn to Hebrews chapter 4. Sometimes we think, well, why should God care about me? And why should Christ care about me? But in Hebrews chapter 4, looking at verses 15 and 16, we have not a high priest which cannot be touched by the feelings of infirmities, but was in all points tempted like us, as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Jesus has gone through everything we've gone through. You know that when you go to him and say, I feel alone, he did too. You know when you go to him and say, my family won't help me, his didn't either. Or my friends forsake me. Look what happened to him. He understands your feelings, your infirmities. So when we go to the Father through him, we have an advocate who makes intercession for us, who can tell God, I understand what he's saying or she's saying. I know their feelings. Isaiah chapter 57. In verses 20 and 21. Now, I want you to notice this, because this is true. What was true then is true today. But the wicked are like the troubled sea when it cannot rest, whose waters cast up mire and dirt. There is no peace, saith my God, to the wicked. Anyone outside of Christ, how do you find peace? How do you find rest? But if you're living a godly life and doing as he asks you to do, Jesus said, come unto me and you'll find rest. Well, you do find rest. You find rest for your soul, rest from your sins, rest for the present, for the trials and tribulations of this life, rest for the future when the judgment comes. So we cannot turn our backs on God, but constantly look to him and encourage those who are outside of God to come in so they can receive that rest. In Philippians chapter 4, I mentioned prayer before, but I want you to look at this. Philippians 4, verses 6 and 7. Reading from the King James, it says, be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Now, the word be careful for nothing, what he's talking about here, don't worry. That's what we do. We worry. And the only thing worry is going to do is give you gray hair, or you're going to lose it. But go to him in prayer. if we constantly are going to God in prayer about what our problems are, He will help you. He'll give you that peace of mind. Now, how that works, I can't tell you. I don't know. It's one of those things that only God knows. But He'll give you that peace of mind. When a person puts on Christ, he becomes part of the family of God. And that's blood related. We are all related through the blood of Christ. We're all family. Whether here, in Lancaster, or East Overshoe, it doesn't matter. If you're members of the church, we're all brothers and sisters. And family cares for family. The godly family will not turn its back on you, where your own family might. We are here for each other. We uplift one another. John, I think it's John 13, if I remember correctly. Yeah, John 13, verse 34 and 35. A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another as I have loved you, that ye shall also love one another. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one to another. It'd be kind of discouraging if we were all here, but we didn't love one another. But because we do, we take the time to talk to one another and try to encourage and uplift one another. Because we all want to take everybody to heaven with us. But if you've got brother in a need and don't take the time to talk to them or help them in any way that you can, what you're saying is, I don't care. But we do that. We show that love and that kindness because Christ showed it to us. We need to show it to everybody else. And when you do that for the family, it kind of spills out over into the world. And then you start talking to other people and encouraging them. And the next thing you know, you have their attention. They see you as someone they can trust, someone they can talk to. Then you have an opportunity to teach them because of the way you treat people and the way you speak. Remember, it only takes a step to get to Christ. Just one little step. But if you're not willing to take that step, nothing can be done. It's your choice, your decision. It only takes a step. You know, it's kind of like the soldier that went to war. And his son couldn't walk when he left because he had cerebral palsy. But when he got home, his son walked out to him. Well, Jesus is the same way, like the father of the prodigal son. God's the same way. He's there with open arms waiting for us. He doesn't say, well, forget it, they're gone, I don't care. No. He's there waiting for us to make that decision to come home. Remember, God will never turn his back on us. But we can turn our back on him and our brethren if we're not careful. Love is a really great thing. And when you care, everybody knows it and everybody feels it. So if you have a need this morning to put on Christ in baptism or need the prayers of the congregation, there's no better time than now as Bob leads us in a song.